I actually think the whores have a point when it comes to purity culture. Sex is part of life and it's a natural desire. Women being sexually active is getting delayed, like it's happening later. But I think there's kind of levels of maturity women go through. And usually it's dating a guy a little bit out of women's league, dating, sleeping with. Some women can get relationships with him. But usually the most alpha guys we go to for are when we're younger. And I would say there's a level of maturity that comes with getting humbled, right? And I would say, I think Gen Z, everything's getting like delayed. Like all of the big canon events that happen to men and to women are either not happening or they're getting like delayed. Yeah. So I don't know if that made sense. That was not my most coherent thought, but
cut-off point to start doing.
Yeah, and I'm saying I would advise my daughter to wait until she's 23 to even post like a bikini photo on Instagram, because the rates of sexual regret in general just completely plummet after the age of 23.
Do you know why sexual regret though is higher?
Oh, sorry.
Well, it's not because
delaying sex. That's what I was going to say. I don't think delaying sex is really going to do much. It just pushes the can down the road. So when women lose their virginities later, what I see happening is it just stunts them. Like it stunts them as people, it stunts them sexually. Like honestly, the girls that got it over with younger got married sooner. Just my anecdotal experience. I understand the ideal is to wait till marriage, but most women aren't doing that. So it's like, usually there's a certain point that women go through where we have to be more pragmatic with what we're going to pick. And it's usually what I've seen is like 2 or 3 long-term relationships before women get married. And by delaying that, it just kind of stunts. Anyways, I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I just see a lot of like adults that are still functioning as teenagers because we don't go through the canon of, especially like millennials. We just didn't go through like the canon events that a lot of other generations went through. Like for example, my mom, she went to school with someone that got pregnant at 16. And everyone kind of saw her as a whore, but she just married the dad and then they stayed together. That's another reason which motivated early marriage. Yeah, I just don't. What I see with delayed like virginity, and I could even try not to speak about my own experience online, but what happens is you are just stunted like sexually and you don't get relationship skills. And nowadays you can't change society. So if you're not having sex, you're not getting into a relationship unless you're super religious, but that's rare. And so I even see this a lot in the churches. Well-meaning Christians will tell women to wait, and some of them do, but the women don't get any relationship skills. So by the time the women get into those relations, there was a girl I knew in high school. She dated like 3 or 4 dudes in the same social circle, and she was really pretty, but she had more relationship skills by the time she graduated high school. Not all experience is like bad experience. And if anything, because I kind of saw the other side of the spectrum with a very religious church I was in. And like the problem you get with old virgins is they just have like no skills and they over dramatize sex. So they make sex the end of the world and it puts way too much pressure on the guy. Relationship skills, how to control your husband. No, I would say it's not what I mean. Like, for example, and you really only develop these if you have a guy that tells you no, and that is pretty rare. But it's kind of like when you deal with the opposite gender, there's just stuff that you learn. Like you learn when to shut up as a woman. That's a great skill to have. You learn when to give him space. You learn how to, like, women that have lived with a guy before, they have the skill of cooking for 2, right? Cleaning up and not nagging him about it. Now, some women get into relationships and they get worse. I'm not discounting that. But I don't see women that hold off on losing their virginity. I see it, and this is just me being I see them getting cooked. I see them getting cooked in the dating market more than anybody. Because usually the women holding out on virginity are overweight. They're not attractive enough to hold out. They're not. You have to be a certain level of attractive to, yeah, you got to be as thin as Farrah. So,
the age is because they're in the context of casual sex.
Yeah,
and the
because
reason why,
because of sexual coercion. And you're actually most likely to be sexually coerced by a romantic partner rather than a casual partner. Women report being most likely to be reported into violent sexual acts by their boyfriend or husband. And that's why pimps, for instance, are so eager to employ like the lover boy method, because they know nothing gets a woman saying yes faster to a sexual act than playing boyfriend or husband. So when you talk about sexual regret and sexual coercion, it's not more from casual sex. It's actually more likely to be caused by your boyfriend or husband.
Does it concern you that...
It's actually under the influence. It's
now what she's talking about, and all right, I'm gonna be very real about. I want to have adult conversations here. So if you don't have any, yes, I would say that sex and a guy playing husband and boyfriend is very intoxicating for women. It totally is. You can be completely under a guy's spell. However, that is why I really would tell women to go in with the expectation to figure out what your values are and go in and expect nothing, because nowadays you don't know what you're going to get.
Also because under the influence of drugs and alcohol, which is when a lot of sexual encounters.
Okay, but what do you think about that? The
and
fact
you're
that
actually
women are
citing
statistically
studies by the
that women
American
are more.
Psychological
What do you think of the
Association
fact
that you
women
don't really know?
No, genuinely address it. What do you think of the fact that women are most likely to be pressured into sexual acts by a boyfriend or husband because that type of arrangement that you see as so loving and respectful actually primes?
Okay, so what she's talking about, is betas that don't have social. There's men that do not have the skills to seduce women into sex. There are men that have not and do not know how to seduce their wives. And women resent having to have sex where they're not seduced, where they don't really want to, where they feel pressured. And so what she's talking about is, hey, what about the women that are forced to sleep with their husbands they're not attracted to? That's what she's communicating, or she's trying to communicate. I've come to realize arranged marriages are the way to go. Well, it depends. It depends what you believe. You either want to force women to have sex with men they're not attracted to, or you don't. I understand both points of view, but yeah, I mean, if you think that women should be able to, it's a burden of performance, right? And in a way, I would say marriage takes the burden of performance off of men and women. What about when they say no 100 times? Why should a man even bother? It does more damage to the guy. Yeah, at that point, cheat. I prefer arranged, but they have a choice in it too. Well, okay, but if you do that, if you go back to arranged marriage, what happens? Women are always going to pick the hot guy. And it's gonna go back to the same thing. So we either want to force women or not.
Her for coercion.
Well, first of all, that's self-reporting, so we don't actually know the context behind it. And secondly,
because you were just so eager to cite sexual regret in the context of casual sex, and now that it's inconvenient, now you're like, well, that's self-reporting.
Of course, I regret every sex I had that didn't work out. Do you know what I mean? Of course, but you can't get in the door unless you put out. Sorry, it's 2025. Any other YouTubers claiming purity and that's not part of the deal are just lying. Okay, they're lying. You could do that with your high school boyfriend. As most of you know, I have been fighting on the front lines of the simp epidemic for years, but I need to tell you about a quiet weapon being ratcheted up against men that is rarely talked about. It's not just the relentless anti-masculinity propaganda and OnlyFans hoes causing the societal issues that we discuss on this show. Did you know that the average city's tap water contains trace pharmaceuticals and endocrine disruptors? This often includes estrogen from birth control. The average adult consumes a credit card worth of plastic every single week. That's 5 grams of plastic a week on average. So it's no wonder that the average male's testosterone is half of what the average was 50 years ago. Testosterone levels decline 1% a year, and without a course correction, we are headed towards extinction. No matter how based you are, you need to be naturally boosting your testosterone. My friends at Choq, CHOQ.com, are on a mission to save mankind from extinction by boosting your vitality. Choq's Male Vitality Stack contains premium and potent herbs clinically studied to naturally boost your testosterone levels, sperm count, and overall vitality. Just one of the many ingredients in the Male Vitality Stack was studied in double-blind human clinical trials to boost total testosterone 20% in 90 days. When you boost your testosterone, you'll have more mental clarity, you're more capable of making decisions and taking risks. Having high testosterone will also affect your pheromones, so women will find you more attractive subconsciously. Get the Choq Male Vitality Stack right now on Choq.com. That's CHOQ.com. Use my name Pearl as your coupon code and you'll get 25% off site-wide on Choq.com. That's CHOQ.com. My name Pearl is the discount code. There are the occasional ones that get lucky, but the data is telling us that is not part of the deal anymore. It's not.
It doesn't really count.
No, but the point is, if they're in a relationship where they feel pressure to commit sexual acts, they're in the wrong relationship. And usually, do you know how to model a right relationship? When you've seen it, when you've seen people in healthy, stable relationships. I don't know why you jump from one extreme to another, because you clearly have a very negative association with sex and hang-ups around it. And you just think, I'm just going to make myself safe by being this virginal weirdo that spreads my legs on the internet. But somehow, being in a healthy, stable relationship, which has actually been the prime conditions for building a society, having loving relationships, raising children.
I am in a healthy, stable relationship. I'm not anti-relationship.
That's why he's so thrilled that you're on OnlyFans. But wait until you have that conversation. I'm sure he'd love the mother of his child to have a bumhole spread on.
Does it concern you that OnlyFans is owned by a Ukrainian billionaire who's making a fortune?
No, because it's empowering.
Women
because
like you do.
Women have cut out the middlemen, so it's empowering.
Well, my point being, he's a man. Does it bother you?
What industry isn't run
Now,
by some male?
What happens is, now this is why I try to stress that men that try to control their daughters through purity cult. Now, I actually think the whores have a point when it comes to purity culture. Sex is part of life and it's a natural desire. It is natural for people to want to have sex. That's natural. That's normal. I mean, that's one of the greatest parts of life. Falling in love is one of the greatest parts of living, right? And what the church does is they take it away from you in a way, because what they do is they shame the sex drive, and they make you feel like this having a sex drive and wanting to have sex is wrong. Now, in the old days, they knew that it was a natural desire. That's why people got married at 16. But they make people very weird, and not in a good way, not like socially normal, because they just say to keep pushing it off. So now you got 30-year-old virgins that haven't experienced life. You know, that's one of the greatest parts of life, is falling in love, getting your heart, you know, sometimes it works out and you fall in love and things are great. Sometimes you get your heart broken, but that's part of living, right? And religion just says take zero risks when it comes to sex. Don't go for the guy you want. Don't go for the girl you want. Don't try to bang her on the first date. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, that's how, you know what I remember the day I found out my parents have been married 30 years. And when I was 22, I found out, so I was raised in like Catholic school. And I found out my parents, who have been married 30 years, they got pregnant with a kid when they were super young and gave this kid up for adoption. And I'm like, Mom, you should have told me the best way to get married is to get fucking pregnant. Do you know what I mean? Someone said, why? And I'm like, that's part of life, you know. Turns out every girl, and what I'm not saying is, but when women can't not have, like, when women cannot withhold sex over their husband, when they do not have the desire to do it, those are the best relationships. They really are. But what the church does is they teach women to weaponize sex to get what they want. Because think about it. If she's saying, no, we can only have sex when we get married. Think about it. That's her weaponizing sex to get lifelong commit. Is that even fair? Is that even a fair exchange? The church is teaching men to take bad deals. And they're saying, if you don't take this terrible deal, you are going to be alone. You are going to go to hell. I think that's evil. Oh, that's so evil. Why would you have sex with someone you're not attracted to? Women do it all the time for resources. Sex is the glue of a good relationship. Yeah, and conservatives downplay that. It is one of the most important things. It is better to get your heart broken in a committed relationship than a sneaky link. Well, I hate to say it, but situationships are before relationships now. You can't change society, right? And again, because when the sex comes first, the burden of performance is now on the woman. It's now on the woman to be a good woman and make him want to commit. And that's when you get the best out of women, really. That's why women give more to their sneaky links than their husbands. So that's what she's complaining about. She's complaining about having to have sex with men she's not attracted to. I agree, rolling the dice, but women sleeping around isn't good for them emotionally. Just the facts. I only slept with women I was seeking a relationship with, which is why I got a low body count. Okay. Sleeping around isn't good for women, but I'm telling you, women waiting till 25, 30 to have sex, that's terrible for women. It makes women very weird. It makes women weird. You know, at least once a woman has sex with a guy, if she's smart, she knows where she stands. Okay, he didn't call you back, out of your league. Try again. Try again. Try again. You know, try it. Look. Men and women should get married young. Yeah, but they're not. So I try to have a conversation with adults on how we're going to be pragmatic with the society we have. I don't like having conversations about what should be. Because if we just have a wish list, wish lists are for idiots. Wish lists are for people that have never been in charge of anything and gotten nothing done in life. Because if you've ever been the head of an organization, if you've ever had to deal with a budget, you know you have to work with what you have. We don't have virgins on the market. We have fat whores. Yeah, I'm pragmatic. And it's, you know, I keep hearing this, we need a theocracy. We need all this stuff. Okay. You're going to be, by the time that happens, you're going to be halfway through life and wondering why you didn't live. I'm not convinced that women are better off being used for practice. They get stuck on past guys they can't get over the idea of. Okay, well, at least the woman, look, I've actually met the 30-year-old virgin. Look, at the end of the day in life, it's ideal for women to stay with the first guy they lose their virginity to. It's ideal to know as a woman what kind of guy is completely out of your league. Okay, that's ideal. But we gotta be honest here. Number one, a lot of women are using men for practice. That's why they call them starter husbands. So let's not pretend the women are super innocent in this, okay? And number two, at least a woman that got into a relationship or got married, at least she tried. It's better than someone that's just never getting in the game. It's really easy to criticize from the sidelines. Yeah, young marriage these days would put divorce at 85, 90%. Yeah, I can't change the world we're in. So, you know, it's easy to say, women shouldn't do this or we shouldn't. Well, this is the world you're in. And if you're a young woman, you are probably going to meet your husband on Instagram, Tinder, Hinge. It's not going to be at church. It's most likely, it could be on Snapchat. That's the world we're in. If you're in a major city, it might be at the bars or out and about. Your argument to conform to the world is an insane one. Okay, well, how else are you going to exist? You have to get a job. I mean, in these days, getting married in a traditional way could make you commit suicide in the long term.